Ladies and gentlemen, let me ask you something. Why is it that the moment you step back, suddenly you're the most interesting person in the room? It's funny how silence speaks louder than words. How absence creates a presence so powerful it can't be ignored. We spend so much time chasing, proving, explaining, convincing. But what happens when we stop? What happens when we reclaim our power? Imagine this. You're standing in front of a door, knocking, waiting, hoping for someone on the other side to acknowledge you. And yet, the more you knock, the less they seem to care. But the moment you turn around and walk away, something shifts. Suddenly, the door creaks open. Curiosity piqued. That's the power of not forcing, of knowing your worth so deeply that you refuse to beg for someone's attention. People are drawn to what they can't have. It's human nature. The moment you step back, they start wondering, questioning, missing. And that's not manipulation, it's magnetism. It's the undeniable energy of confidence, of self-respect, of valuing yourself enough to not wait for someone to realize your worth. The real question is, why were you waiting in the first place? When you shift your focus from them to you, everything changes. You start pouring into your own life, into your passions, into the things that make you come alive. And in that space, something incredible happens. You glow differently. You radiate something rare, something undeniable, and suddenly they can't ignore you. So stop chasing, stop convincing, stop proving. Your energy is too powerful, too rare, too valuable to be wasted on someone who only sees your worth when you withdraw. Instead, stand in your power, knowing that when you choose yourself, the right people will choose you too. There's something powerful about stepping away. The moment you remove yourself from the equation, the whole dynamic shifts. It's almost ironic. When you were present, giving, showing up, it felt like you were invisible. But the second you pull back, you become impossible to ignore. Life has a way of teaching us that sometimes silence is louder than words. When you're always available, always reaching out, always making the effort, you become predictable. And predictability often leads to being taken for granted. But the moment you stop, the absence is felt. It's in that space, in that silence, that realization kicks in. Suddenly the presence they overlooked becomes the void they can't escape. Think about it. How often do we fail to notice the sun when it's shining every day, but the second it disappears behind the clouds, we long for its warmth? That's human nature. We don't appreciate consistency until it's gone, and the same applies to people. When you're always there, your presence is expected, but when you pull away, your absence becomes the loudest statement you could ever make. This isn't about playing games, it's about self-respect. It's about understanding that your energy is valuable and should be given to those who truly appreciate it. If someone only notices your worth when you're no longer around, then they never truly valued you in the first place. And that realization, that's freedom. Stepping back isn't a sign of weakness, it's a declaration of strength. It's saying, I am enough whether you acknowledge me or not. And in that moment of reclaiming your power, something incredible happens. Those who ignored you suddenly can't stop thinking about you. Because absence doesn't just create space, it creates clarity. And when you finally decide to put yourself first, the world takes notice. There's a moment in life when you realize that proving your worth to someone is the surest way to lose yourself. You bend, you compromise, you overextend, all in the hope that they will see what you bring to the table. But here's the truth. Your worth is not something to be earned through validation. It exists within you, whether someone acknowledges it or not. When you stop chasing approval, something shifts. You no longer seek attention, and suddenly, attention seeks you. It's not about arrogance. It's about knowing that your value isn't tied to someone else's recognition. You are not here to be someone's afterthought, to beg for the time and effort that should be freely given. You are not a backup plan, not an option, not something to be realized only in absence. The moment you step into that mindset, you become untouchable. Look at the people who radiate confidence, the ones who don't need to explain why they deserve respect. They don't convince, they simply exist in their truth. And because they don't seek validation, they attract it effortlessly. That's the energy of self-worth. It doesn't ask for a seat at the table. It commands presence. Life isn't about proving you're enough for someone else. It's about realizing you've always been enough for yourself. The right people will recognize it. The wrong ones will only notice when it's too late. And that's not your loss, it's theirs. There's something magnetic about a person who knows their worth. It's not about arrogance or playing hard to get. It's about the quiet confidence of someone who refuses to beg for attention. When you stop chasing, stop proving, stop convincing, you step into a space where you no longer need validation. And ironically, that's when people start noticing you the most. Think about it. Have you ever walked into a room and been drawn to someone, not because they were loud or trying to be seen, but because they carried themselves with a kind of effortless presence? That's magnetism. That's self-respect. When you stop trying to be noticed, you become impossible to ignore. It's a paradox, yet it's the way the world works. People aren't attracted to desperation, they're drawn to confidence. It's not about manipulation, it's about energy. When you pour all your focus into someone who doesn't reciprocate, you're sending a message. You're telling them that their attention is more valuable than your own self-worth. But the moment you reclaim that energy, when you choose yourself over the need to be chosen, everything changes. You become the one in control. And suddenly they start wondering why you're no longer chasing, why your world doesn't revolve around them anymore. People don't respect what comes too easily. They respect what they have to earn. And when you shift your focus from needing them to valuing yourself, they feel that shift. They may not have appreciated you when you were giving them your energy freely, but they'll feel the void when you take it away. And by then you'll realize something even more powerful. You were never meant to beg for attention. You were meant to stand in your power and let the right people find their way to you. Energy is everything. Where you place it, how you use it, and who you give it to determines the course of your life. When you spend all your energy trying to be seen, trying to be understood, trying to matter to someone who barely notices, you drain yourself. But the moment you take that energy back and pour it into yourself, something incredible happens. You become unstoppable. Think of it like the sun. It doesn't chase anyone. It shines. It warms everything around it. And the people who recognize its light are drawn to it. You were never meant to beg for someone's time, love, or attention. You were meant to live so fully, so passionately, that those who once overlooked you suddenly wonder why they didn't see your brilliance before. But here's the truth. When you focus on them, you lose focus on yourself. You get caught up in questions that don't serve you. Why aren't they texting back? Do they even care? What more can I do? But when you shift that focus inward, when you invest in your own growth, happiness, and purpose, you stop asking those questions because you no longer need the answer. You become so fulfilled, so aligned with your own path that their attention no longer defines you. And that's when they notice. It's the reason people remember you when you're no longer accessible. They feel the absence of your energy, the space you once filled, but by then something has changed. You've realized you were never meant to be someone's second thought. You were meant to be the person who chooses themselves first. And in doing so, you attract everything and everyone that is truly meant for you. The moment you choose yourself, the world shifts. You stop waiting, stop hoping, stop bending just to fit into someone else's version of love and attention. And in that space of self-acceptance, something powerful happens. The right people start showing up. Not the ones who take you for granted, not the ones who only notice you when you're gone, but the ones who see your worth from the very beginning. When you stop chasing, you make room for what's truly meant for you. Because love, attention, and respect should never be things you have to beg for. If someone only realizes your value when you ignore them, then they never truly saw you to begin with. They only saw the convenience of your presence, not the depth of your being. But you are not an afterthought. You are not a placeholder. You are not someone who should have to disappear just to be noticed. Think about the strongest connections in life. They don't come from forcing, from proving, from convincing. They come naturally, effortlessly from people who recognize your energy without you having to demand it. That's what you deserve. The kind of presence that doesn't need to be absent to be appreciated. The kind of love that doesn't require distance to be valued. The kind of respect that exists whether you're standing next to them or walking away. So when you ignore him and he suddenly can't ignore you, ask yourself, why did it take your absence for him to notice? And more importantly, do you really want someone who only sees your worth when you walk away? Because the right people, the ones who truly matter, will never need you to disappear for them to realize how much you mean. Life has a way of teaching us that the energy we give is a direct reflection of how we see ourselves. If you constantly pour into someone who barely notices, you start to shrink without even realizing it. But the moment you stop, the moment you shift your focus back to yourself, something incredible happens. You expand. You become bigger than the space you were confined to, bigger than the need for validation, bigger than the idea that you have to be seen by someone else to matter. And suddenly the people who overlooked you can't help but notice. They wonder where you went, why your energy is no longer circling around them, why the attention they once dismissed has disappeared, but by then something within you has changed. You no longer crave the recognition because you've found something far greater, your own. This is not about playing games. This is not about withholding affection just to be chased. This is about understanding your worth so deeply that you refuse to waste another second proving it. Because the truth is, the right people will never need you to beg. The ones who truly value you will see you without you having to disappear first. And the ones who don't, they were never meant to stay. So step back, reclaim your energy, pour into yourself the way you once poured into them. Let your presence be a choice, not an expectation, and watch how the world responds. Because when you stop chasing, You don't lose people. You lose the ones who were never meant to be yours. And in return, you gain the most important thing you could ever have, yourself.